All right, Merry Christmas. This is Chat UTD. Not a very Merry Christmas for Manchester United so far, and I haven't done a video since just after the Tottenham game. We've lost two more league games since then. There's so much to cover, both in terms of initial reaction to the form we're in, the results we're getting, the position in the league, etc., but also the wider scenario, wider context of the club, who owns us, where are we going, how can we improve, etc. There's just so much to cover, but we'll start with the situation as is right now. And the situation as is right now is that we've picked up 35 points in the last 31 league games, covering the back end of last season and the start of this season. If we don't get anything against Newcastle, that'll be half a season played and 22 points. As it stands now, we've got 22 points from 18 games. Obviously, if you double that, which would cover the whole season, doesn't always work out that way. We could get more or less points in the second half of the season, but if you double that just on average, it means we're heading for a season of 44 points, which isn't going to get you relegated, but it's going to get you about where we are now, I would imagine, 13th, 14th. I never thought I'd see United finish as low as 8th, to be honest with you. I watched us finish a lot lower than that when I first started supporting us, but as an adult, I didn't think I would watch United, as poor as it's been over the last few years, finish as low as last season, and it's looking like this season's going to be even worse. We've picked up 35 points from our last 31 league games, and I compared that the other day. I was going to do a preview of the Bournemouth game, and Bournemouth now, having beaten us and picked up a point, I think, yesterday, Bournemouth have picked up 49 points in that same period of time. So Bournemouth, who have a stadium that is the same capacity as Stockport County, our ground is 7 times bigger than theirs. You think of the resources we've got compared to them, you think of the history, the prestige, all that kind of stuff. Bournemouth have picked up 14 more points than Manchester United in the last 31 league games. That's not good enough. That's inexplicable. What we've got now, and we've had this for some time, but I think it's getting worse, is that small clubs, no disrespect to Bournemouth, but small clubs, Bournemouth, Wolves aren't a small club, but you know what I mean, we'd expect to beat them back in the day. But particularly clubs like Bournemouth now coming to Old Trafford, there's no trepidation. They fancy their chances. They're thinking to themselves, we smell weakness, we smell fragility. We can go and get a famous result, because it is still a famous result to beat Man United. We're in the worst league position that we've been in since 1989, and I get 1989 vibes about the whole situation. We're a club that were once brilliant, but are just desperately fighting to be relevant and to rid ourselves of the shackles of 11 years post Ferguson of incompetence, mismanagement, being motivated by commerce rather than football. And that's the biggest problem, is the culture at this club is rotten to the core. That's the biggest problem we've got. So rotten is it, actually, that, and so entrenched is that culture, that the really concerning thing is you change your manager, you change the system. We moved a few players on in the summer, we brought a few players in. The guy that I wanted out for the last however many years, Marcus Rashford, isn't getting in the squad at the moment. You make those changes, it doesn't make that much difference. This is the biggest problem we've got, is because it's so broken, the stench of failure and mediocrity and over-rewarding mediocrity, the stench of that is all around us. And so entrenched is it that you make changes that are pretty significant changes, and it doesn't even make that much difference. That's the biggest problem at Man United. And this culture has set now. it's taken, and it takes an awful lot to turn that around. And we can make baby steps, and I think getting rid of Rashford would be a step. But there's so much more needs to happen as well, because this is now an established culture. I think in the post Sir Alex years, the first few post Sir Alex years, we were not good. Of course, the Moyes season was shocking, but under Van Gaal, his first season we finished in the Champions League. I think his second season we finished 5th and won the FA Cup. Mourinho, we finished 6th and won the Europa League. Following season finished 2nd. So not at the time, because we were used to winning, it's not good. But you compare that to now, and it's I think we take that now. On the culture though, I think it's from around that sort of era when, just as Mourinho got sacked, it's from then that this poisonous culture that's at United was taking hold at that point, where we've started to over reward mediocrity, and that's been the case since then. Really, it's continued to happen. We've given contracts out to players who are just not worth those contracts. We've given status to players who don't deserve the status they've got. And then you become starved of oxygen, you become starved of success. So when a player even has a decent run of form, the fans, the club, everyone starts treating that player like they're something that they're not. And that's not just Rashford, that's Dalot. Is the other one that springs to mind. He has a decent run of form at the back end of last season, and everyone all of a sudden thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread. Surprised he's not got like a new £400,000 a week contract. If it was the Glazers running the ship still, then probably they would. They've over-rewarded massively, and Rashford's the beacon of that, unfortunately. But that has had time to take hold now, and therefore you make these changes that they're trying to make, and it's just not enough. It just doesn't touch the sides. The players at Man United, and I said this last season, we lost 14 league games last season, we finished 8th. And it's going to be worse this season by the look of it, and I said it then, last season. There's too many of these players. Not only are they not good enough quality-wise, but they don't have the physical, mental, emotional, and psychological wherewithal to play for a club like Manchester United. Some of them are bad eggs, some of them aren't. They just don't meet that criteria that I just set. I'm going to go through them, and I'm going to be cutthroat. And I'm not thinking about us winning leagues and stuff when I say these players don't belong at Man United. I mean, these players don't belong at Man United to get us to finish 5th or 6th. So here we go. Onana, Shaw, Dalot, Maguire, Lindelof, Casemiro, Eriksen, Anthony, Rashford, I'm going to say it, Højlund, there's more than that. There's Xerxes, there's 11. There's more than that. I'm missing some, I'm sure I am. But they're the ones that just off the top of my head I can think of and say they don't meet that criteria. I'll go through it. Physical, emotional, mental and psychological wherewithal to play for a club like Man United. They don't have it. One or all of those attributes that are needed. They haven't got the resilience. They haven't got the capacity, the character to do it. And too many of them are on significant contracts that have been given to them, often not by Ineos, but by the Glazers, although Ineos have given Bruno a massive contract, which I don't think he warranted. As big a fan as I am of Bruno, I don't think he warranted the contract he got in the summer. So there's loads of them that are not good enough. But this is all like a jigsaw puzzle that just doesn't work, in that you say, okay, we'll get rid of them then. How? How are you going to get rid of them? They're on contracts which are crazy, because we celebrate and reward mediocrity, which is a cultural issue, which is what I said at the start of near the start of the video. It all circles back around to the same sort of stuff in the end. The culture you set is everything at a football club. Now, we've been hit with a double whammy of Ferguson leaving and the Glazers then taking control, really, because they just stayed out of the way. Malcolm Glazer stayed out of the way of Ferguson and Gill because they knew it worked, and they knew he was a genius. And there was implications to that. We didn't have the same money. We never reinvested the Ronaldo money when we sold Ronaldo the first time. There was the 2009 Green and Gold campaign, which was brilliant, and I loved that. I was really vocal with that. I wanted the Glazers gone just as much then as I do now, because I could see the scum. But we were still relatively successful because we had a manager who was a genius, who set the culture of the club. When he retired, you've got the loss of Ferguson, which was always going to be significant, no matter what the landscape of the club looked like in terms of the wider culture and who was owned the club or whatever. You could have the best owners in the world, we'd suffer when Ferguson retired. But you've got him retiring and then them taking it on. And as I mentioned before, they've been motivated by commerce, not football. So they make appointments then that stay true to that. They make appointments like Ed Woodward. Ed Woodward, in a serious sporting institution, would have been sacked after 2 years. Anywhere else. Any top performing outlet, sporting outlet like institution, should I say, the LA Lakers, the Chicago Bulls, Real Madrid, Barcelona, whatever. And it's not just football, it's other institutions as well. He'd have gone because he was an abject failure. But not only did they not sack him, they continued to reward him, give him pay rises, and give him more and more power because they don't care about football. When they did spend money, they spent it so poorly that now we're left with the problems with FFP and all that kind of stuff that has been brewing and building for years. The mismanagement of money has been unreal. So I don't know if anyone's watched it. If you get the chance to, I definitely would. I watched the Ferguson documentary on BBC iPlayer, which came out yesterday on Boxing Day, and I watched it over the last couple of days. Parts 1 and 2, fantastic. His whole career, really. It's not just the United stuff, but obviously United is the main part of his footballing life, and just reliving those moments was bittersweet, really, but a reminder, if it was necessary, of what a colossal person he was, and what an influence he was, and what an impact he had. And when you talk about culture, he set the culture. He was a catalyst for change at the club. Now, Ineos have come in a year ago, and they have changed some things, and they, I'm sure, are with better intent than what the Glazers are and have been. They have got a football board that they've appointed. They, I think, probably do want us to be successful on the pitch. But that on its own is not a big enough catalyst for change. Maybe Amrim will be. I'm going to come back to Amrim in a bit, but we need a catalyst. We need something to stir us from where we are now, because all of the stuff that needs to happen to change this culture is going to take a long time. And in the meantime, we need something that helps the fans believe in something again, because we require at the moment a lot of faith. Faith is believing in something you can't see yet. And as United fans, that's what we're having to do, because there is nothing that gives United fans any semblance of hope at the moment. We're not 14th and thinking that's unfair. That's not a fair reflection of where we should be. This is where we should be. We're not very good. You could argue with the squad we've got, the quality of the squad should be better than 14th, but with the way that we play, we're no better than 14th. This isn't a travesty. This is about right. Any higher would probably flatter us. So we need so much to change, but we need a catalyst, we need a trigger, we need something to get us going. I talk quite regularly about these stages that I think we're going to have to go through if we want to ultimately be successful again under Ineos, and we're in stage one at the moment. And stage one, to remind you, is stage stage one should be that over the next 2 or 3 seasons we start to finish regularly top 5 or 6, but more importantly than that, we rid the club of those players that I mentioned before who haven't got the physical, mental, emotional, and psychological capacity to play for Manchester United. We maybe don't replace them with world beaters because we haven't got a lot of money, but perhaps we start to have a better profile of player that we bring in. Our hit rate on recruitment gets better. We develop a style. The DNA starts to become more apparent. Young players start to get a chance, and maybe we win the odd trophy here or there. That's stage one, but with a very firm, fixed way of playing and an identity starting to develop. Not just survival ball like it was under Ten Hag and Ollie, where maybe you get those results, as in you might win a trophy or you might finish top 6, but it's not sustainable. It's not built on anything. It's built on sand. I mean that we have very strong foundations. I thought that stage one would take probably, I think I initially said 3 or 4 seasons, and then I revised that and said, actually, with a decent manager and stuff, it should only take 2 seasons, let's say. Well, this is season one, and we're not finishing fifth or sixth this season. So this stage one could potentially take 3 or 4 seasons to establish. Stage two is you start to have a very discernible style of play, a strong identity where week in, week out, you might not win every game, but you know roughly what you're going to get from the team. And there's something we can identify with. There's a United DNA coming through. Young players are playing. Teams from young lads from the academy are getting more and more game time. We're starting to play an attractive brand of football. We score goals. We win more games than we don't. We finish regularly top 3 or 4, and maybe we win a trophy here or there, or maybe consistently start to win trophies. We start to become a serious part of a conversation at the top end of the Premier League without maybe being able to get over the line and win it. You have to do stage one before you can get to stage two. You can't skip stage one. So stage two, it could last 2 or 3 seasons. Stage two is as far as we're going to get, in my opinion. But stage three then would be winning the league again on a regular basis and competing at the back end, the serious business end of the Champions League. Now, I don't think we're getting to stage three with the current ownership model as it is. But even stage one, what's the 5-point plan for stage one? What's Ratcliffe's idea to make sure we successfully navigate through stage one so we can get towards where we actually want to get to, that end goal and objective of being successful again? To stage two even. How do we get to stage two? What's his plan? Because you and I can see he probably needs to get rid of 10 or 11 players. How many realistically can he get rid of? How do you then profile players successfully enough to make the recruitment better to bring ones in that are going to be successful? How many can you afford? How many young players are you going to bed in? What time frame do you give this manager? These are all serious decisions that need to be made, and that's just for stage one. As I said, for me, I'm not even sure we'll get to stage two with the current ownership model. The reason being, we haven't got the money to do what we need to do. The collateral damage that's been left over by the Glazers is colossal, and the burdens that we have had under the Glazers are still burdening us now. I don't think we've necessarily got the expertise in the right positions to do it, and I'm not sure 100% that the level of motivation to get United to where they need to be is high enough either. One of the biggest problems is the starting point is so poor and the culture is so rotten, and that's not on Ineos, but they're starting from a really bad position in terms of trying to get through those stages. That's why I believe they are, with this current ownership model, I think the ceiling is stage two, and I'm not even sure we'll get to that. But the burdens that I mentioned now with the Glazers, the debt is still there. The issues with FFP and PSR are there because of the Glazers and the decisions they've made over the last few years, the financial mismanagement. The culture is so poor because of them, because of the over-rewarding of players that haven't deserved to be rewarded. The stadium is a ticking time bomb. What are we going to do with the stadium? It's going to cost inordinate amounts of money to sort that out. And I know that there's talk of public funding being involved, but it's still going to cost the club a significant amount of money. So when that happens, because something needs to be done with it, whether it's completely knocked down and started again or whether it's just worked on, that needs to happen soon. When that happens, you can absolutely bet your bottom dollar that we won't be able to compete in the transfer market. We will reduce what we can spend in the transfer market, or maybe have to sell key players, of which we haven't really got any at the moment. But that then becomes really, really difficult, because the team needs significant funds to be spent on it to keep improving. So what happens when the stadium's being done? Where is that money coming from? Again, that's all because of the Glazers and their mismanagement of the club over this period of time. And we'll have our highs. We'll have our moments like a week ago, believe it or not. God, it feels like longer than that. It's nearly 2 weeks ago, I suppose, actually, when we beat City. But I said then, this isn't a new dawn. This isn't, you hope it is, of course, but we've been here before where we've got a good result against a team like City. We won the FA Cup final against them. We beat Liverpool in the quarter-final of the FA Cup 4-3. This team is capable of in a one-off game, doing quite well. But it's just as likely then to lose 3-0 at home to Bournemouth. So there's no point in getting too high when you win. And there's no point in believing that you've turned a corner. And there's no point in getting too low when you lose against Bournemouth and thinking that you're going to get relegated when you lose to Wolves, because that's par for the course as well, and we're not going to get relegated. Just on that, because it is a theme of things that have been spoken about in the last 24 hours. People have used the R word quite a bit. This is relegation form. We're 8 points clear of the relegation zone. We're not getting relegated. But I've always said, and I mean it, if getting relegated meant the Glazers left our club, I'd take it in an instant. Such is the damage that they've done, and such is the need for us to just basically rip it up and start again. We're in no man's land at the moment. We're not going to get in Europe probably for next season, but we're not going to get relegated either. We're just in this horrible nothingness. And actually going down, which won't happen, but if it did, would actually be better than this, because they'd probably leave. I think certainly if it was guaranteed that they left, I'd absolutely take it, but they'd probably leave. And your hand is forced, and you have to get a lot of the players off the books. You have to start going for more honest players. You have to start bringing through academy products. You have to start again. We'd get promoted straight away. We'd probably win a lot of games. The club would enjoy being good again for a season. I'd probably feel more like I could get behind it, because you've reached rock bottom and you want to see your club drag itself back up again. It wouldn't be Armageddon for United. Armageddon is the Glazers. Relegation isn't, because you can recover from that. You can't recover from having the Glazers as your owners whilst they're still here. But it's not going to happen. We're not going down. I said last season, when Ineos took over, United are a dying club. Despite the song saying we'll never die. We are a dying club. And as I said then, with Ineos coming in, all that does is basically keep us on life support. Doesn't restore you to health. Doesn't restore you to the vibrant, effervescent, joyful club that we've been. It's not enough. That's not going to happen. And Goldbridge said something, I think he said it a few times in recent days, that I think is absolutely true, and that's that Ineos almost play the sympathy card of, we've walked into a mess and we're trying to deal with a lot of stuff, and we haven't got any money, and and like Goldbridge said, there was an option there for us. unless Qatar was a red herring. But on the face of it, there was an option there for us for a full takeover with someone who was going to wipe out the debt, have money to build the stadium, have enough money to be able to write off some of these contracts and let players go probably for minimal fees just to get them off the books. Whether they do that or not, who knows? But that would be an option because of the money that we would have. And the Glazers, more important than any of this, the Glazers would be gone, and we'd have full restoration of hope for the future of our club. I don't see that hope at all. I see a fan base that needs something to cling to, that needs something to believe in, and we haven't got it. And I repeat what I said more than a year ago. We just look like a club that's on life support, just getting by. No signs of life, really. And that brings me to Amorim. He said in his press conference ahead of the Newcastle game, you know, he feels like he is in danger because any manager that's in a big position, if you're not winning games, you're in danger. You see what he did at Sporting Lisbon. You see the culture that he played a massive part in creating. But you see the structure around him was brilliant. He's brought his coaching staff with him. He's been brave with Rashford. He is very good communication-wise. I actually like the system that he plays, although it's not working yet. But the issue for any manager is, whether we like it or not, is that wins buy you credibility. And at the moment, we're finding him credible because we know about all of the other issues that are at the club that are not his fault, and we know he's a very good manager at Sporting Lisbon. But he has to have imposed himself and his style more than what he has done, and it has to start to we have to start to see improvement soon. Not or he'll lose his job or anything like that, but more for him to retain that credibility he's got with his fan base, because he has got good credibility with the United fans. Because we all know that he's not the problem, and we all know that he's got a good reputation, and he's a good young manager that I think if we didn't get him, some of the other big clubs in the world would want him. But you look at the Wolves manager. They've played 2 games under him. They won 3-0 at Leicester and 2-0 against us. So they scored 5 goals and conceded none. In the last 2 games, we've conceded 5 goals and scored none. And I said when Amorim came in, to impose your style straight away is not difficult. Not difficult at all. To sustain it is difficult. This guy at Wolves, I don't doubt within 2 years won't be there anymore. But he's made an immediate impact on Wolves. They're playing differently to how they were playing before. They're confident and they're winning. The Wolves have better players than us. Maybe they do, but I don't think they do. They certainly don't have the same. They don't have the same level of reward that our players have got. That's for sure. But it looks to me like Amorim's had and his coaching staff have had no impact on this group of players. That's really worrying. If you say to me, right, so what the club's is gearing up for in January is just to go, right, there's 11 that you need to go, we can't do that, but we're going to get rid of 5 in January. The season's a write-off, so we're going to get rid of 5 of them in January. Be cutthroat. We're going to bring maybe 2 in, and we're going to say to Ruben, you've got to pick lads from the academy. And base the next part of the season on youth and who remains, basically, as well. And if you did that, I'd go, cool. Let's see what happens. Let's go for it. Let's see if we can build something with that. We all know that's not going to happen. Rashford might go, which is desperately needed. And I think the culture will change once he goes. I do think that, because to have him as your most highly paid player is ridiculous. and I'll be delighted if he goes. But beyond that, we might get rid of one more, and we might bring one or two in, which means we've got what we've got. And he has to start finding a way of getting a tune out of the players. And if he can't get a tune out of these ones, I want him to do something different to what Ten Hag did last season. Don't keep picking them. Start picking youngsters. Because that is the DNA of Manchester United. And fans will 100% get behind that. What have we got to lose? We've got Arsenal in the FA Cup third round. We're not going through from that. That'll be that out. So we're not going to get through in the FA Cup. We're 14th in the league. Even if we got on a good run, we're not getting Europe from our league position this season. And you got the Europa League, which is highly winnable, but not with the way we're playing at the moment. It's not. So there's a lad in the academy, Bianchetti, I think he's called. I might have got that wrong. He's a Welsh striker. He scored 16 goals in 17 games with 6 assists in the academy. He's 18. He turned 18 in September. Give him some game time. We've got £100 million worth of players in Xerxes and Rasmus as our 2 strikers, neither of which look close to being ready to lead the line for Man United. There's no dynamism, there's no movement, there's no goal threat. Too often anyway, there's no goal threat. How much worse could a kid from the academy do if you bring him in? Jack Fletcher, wand of a left foot, as I've mentioned before. There's loads of them. But my concern is, when I'm looking at the bench, you might have the odd one from the academy who's thrown in on the bench. You're not seeing too much in the way that makes you think, but he's put 3 or 4 of them on the bench. There's a few of them that are training with the first team squad. You're not seeing any hint that that's about to happen. But for me, that's what I would want him to do. And he will absolutely get the support of the fans if he does that. Because he has been given the chance now to come into United and be something of a catalyst, something of a standard bearer. He needs time, but he also needs the tools. If he can't get the tools, then he has to be resourceful with what he's got and use young players. And you can't, as a manager, come in and have absolutely no impact and say, oh, it's everything else. It's your job to have an impact. So he's got to find a way of doing it. And I hope he does, because I think he's a really, really good manager there. And he needs the support of everyone. He needs the support of the club. He needs the support of the fans. And the fact we're so low down actually just makes me double down in my support of him. And I really, really want him to do well, and I want him to start picking up results, because I want us to say he's our guy, and he has then the autonomy and the power to get rid of the ones that aren't going to come with him. And we were always going to suffer. We were always going to have a spell where, when he's trying to implement his style of play with players who perhaps are not mouldable or whatever, it was going to hit a sticky patch. And I just don't think we've even had a honeymoon. That's the concern. But we're in the sticky patch. But a sticky patch just becomes the norm. That's the problem at United. So don't wait to the end of the season. The club has got to act now and start to rid the squad of the players, as I'll repeat myself, that don't have the physical, emotional, mental and psychological wherewithal to play for Man United. There's too many of them. They need to go. But it's not as easy as that, is it? So we're in a really, really difficult position. Really, really difficult. And the Newcastle game, we're obviously without Ugarte, we're without Bruno. We're in obviously not great form at all. Newcastle are doing well at the moment. It's got to be one of the nights where everyone, I think, sticks together, where the fans are out in force, where the atmosphere is ferocious for the players, whether we believe in them or not. And we, even if it doesn't mean anything moving forward, we've got to have something to put a smile back on people's faces, because the derby feels like weeks ago, and it's not, but it's been so poor since. I've covered a lot of stuff there today, so well done for bearing with me if you did. But really, I saw something over Christmas that, Qatar are still interested, and it didn't even really rouse me, because I just thought, well, it's been and gone, it's not going to happen. But we're so limited with the ownership structure that we've got. We'll have some wins, we'll have some highs, we'll have some lows, we'll have some inconsistencies. We haven't put back-to-back league wins together, by the way, since the last two games of last season. Don't think we've won back-to-back games this season at all. So in 10 months, we've won consecutive games once. The statistics, as I mentioned at the start, are just horrific. And so much needs to change. How much of it can be done straight away, I don't know. So if it's step by step, it's step by step. And if it means getting Rashford out first and he's the sacrificial lamb, then fine. But so much needs to change, because Rashford hasn't been part of the last 4 squads, and we've lost 3 of those games. Best Christmas present I could want, if it's a post-Christmas present, if by miracle of some kind or other, finally we got those horrible Glazers out.